Thomas Hobbes once opined in the origin and theory of the state that life is short, nasty, and brutish without a government, and tagged it the Hobbesian pattern of life. On this, we are looking at the citizens' rights protection, the role of the government. My name is Philip Omogyupo. Welcome to a fresh edition of Law and You. Joining me on today's edition is a sound and articulate legal practitioner in the person of the Udu Sunday. Good to have you join me, Sunday.
Thank you very much.
Now, let's look at the issues about the citizens' rights protection. And you agree with me looking at what Thomas Hobbes theorized in the origin of the state. There came a time where people had to give rights to some persons, to man institutions in order to safeguard the society. And these institutions meant now culminated to become a government with structures set to protect their rights. Now, do you agree, because like it's been perceived today in the government of Nigeria, that the government seems to be perceived by these citizens as not protecting the rights of the citizenry? How do you assess the government as per the protection of the citizens' rights just now?
Thank you very much. The perception of the citizens in respect to whether or not the government has lived up to its expectation and the bidding of the citizens is true that the government have not, of course, been able to live up to that expectation. Now, the government is vested with powers as contained in the Constitution, which, of course, means that the rights and citizens of the country should be protected. If you look at the provisions of Chapter 2 and Chapter 4 of the 1999 Constitution as amended, the citizens' rights and government obligations in meeting those rights are contained in those provisions. The question is that more often than not, over the years, the government have not lived up to this expectation. That is the reason why you see what is happening currently in the country.
Okay.
So the citizens are right. They are very right and correct to say that the government has reneged in their fundamental responsibilities to protecting the rights of citizens of the country.
Okay, we will see this in policy formulation and implementation. For instance, just now, the country citizens, they are crying over the aspect of note scarcity, naira note scarcity. And even amidst this challenge of petrol scarcity, we seem to be having scarcity in many things or commodities we are having just now in the country. Now, what do you see as the rights of the citizens, being infringed upon? Do you see this in the aspect of the CBN policies of limiting citizens to few naira notes? Do you see that as an infringement on their rights?
Well, I have to take a holistic approach to the naira design and the consequential implications of the scarcity of the naira. First, the policy is a good one and it's in the right direction. However, it's planned out and implementations is very wrong. Now, around October last year, 2022, the government came with a policy that the naira should be redesigned, and as such, the citizens should return the monies, the old notes with them. That is the 500, the 200, the 500, and 1,000. The government ought to know that they ought to have printed the lower denominations, that is the 5 naira, 10 naira, 20 naira, 50 naira, 100 naira, should have been surplus.
Yeah, to meet up with the deficit that would be in the naira notes.
So 3 months again is too long for the government not to have contemplated that this occurrence will happen. I listened to an interview granted by the president where he argued that the 3 months notice was enough for people to return their money and that there was no going back. Unfortunately, the government itself did not put measures in place to cushion the adverse impact of the return of those money. That is the reason why you see the extension they are giving for 10 days. It's lack of proper planning and analysis. Because when you are doing a planning, you do analysis, I also look at what is the consequences, what will be the resultant effect of this policy.
Okay, but this policy resultant effect, do you see it now as it is being implemented as an infringement?
It is an infringement
on the rights of the citizens.
It's a strict infringement. The implementation now is an infringement, fundamental infringement on the rights of the citizens.
Okay.
But first, the citizens who have returned the old notes can't get the new note back.
I remember vividly when we had this discussion about the Naira notes.
Yes.
And the CBN as the regulator. You said, well, not necessarily you,
yes,
but as provided by the Constitution,
of course,
you also supported the fact that according to the provisions of the Constitution, the CBN has the right to regulate policies in this regard.
They
and
do.
And he is the only officer or office that can override the decisions of the CBN is the president.
Yes.
Now, in a situation where we have this challenge, and then the president just now has said that he should be given 7 days to resolve the crisis as pertaining the note scarcity, or as in Naira note scarcity. Now, what is upon the other arms of government, the judiciary, the legislature, peradventure the president fails to resolve this crisis within 7 days?
Even the call by the president that it should give him 7 days to resolve is reactionary. And it is belated. The reason that during planning and assessment of a plan and policy, all of these circumstances are taken into cognizance before implementing the policy. You don't implement the policy hastily. The president ought to have contemplated all of this, and the CBN governor. They do not do interrogation of the policy before implementing it. That's a challenge. Now again, the question is, if he fails, assuming he fails to ensure that this policy is, of course, cushion the impact that he has now on the city, what then is the way forward? That is the question. The question is that by the legal framework of the Constitution and the CBN Act, the executive, through the president, is the only person who has the power.
That's the challenge.
That's the challenge.
That's the challenge.
Now, again, if you also go further,
you are saying that the other arms of government have no powers.
The thing is that
mostly the legislature.
They cannot. They are handicapped.
Even while the people suffer.
They are handicapped.
That leaves some hopes in the provisions of the Constitution.
No, it's not. You see, the reason why the monetary policy of a country actually determines the identity of the country. And the identity of the country is vested in the president.
It then leaves the economy at the mercy of the president and the CBN.
No, the economy of the country actually ought to have been driven by the president vis-a-vis the CBN governor, who of more food than not is an economist, who should also be the economic advisor to the president on how to drive the economy. Now, the policy, as I say, is a well thought out of. I have also argued, if you remember, in my argument, that we should phase out 500 naira note and 1,000 naira note. I mentioned it there. I think we are going there.
Yeah,
they are going to phase it out.
Okay.
Now, the policy, as I said, is a well articulated policy. It is the planning implementation that is wrong. It's a good idea to phase out 1,000 naira note or to have limited cash in circulation.
Okay.
But the question is that while they were doing this planning, the government failed on their part. The policy makers, the CBN and the president, whatever it is, failed on their part, because the CBN also have a governing board. Failed on their part to have interrogated the impact the policy will have on the citizens.
Okay.
That is where they fail. It's not the policy itself, it's implementation, it's planned out. Of course, if they have planned and ensured that, for instance, we now have 50-50 naira notes, 100 naira notes, 20 naira in circulation, and you bring in your 1,000 naira, maybe you now get 500, 50 naira in return, you collect the money and go back.
Okay, if I'm to get you rightly, the aspect where the 7 days deadline expires, or the not necessarily a deadline, the 7 days given by the president to resolve the crisis, if it expires, are you saying that there's nothing the people can do, or the legislature or the judiciary can do?
The citizen can continue to interrogate the system, just as we are doing now. The citizen can lay a peaceful protest. The president, if you look at it politically, he cannot be sued for not keeping to that pace. If he says 7 days,
there are no constitutional provisions.
There are no constitutional provisions that you can sue him. for not doing it.
Okay, so which means the whole razzmatazz going on in the National Assembly. You know,
no. They are just going to the gallery
to extend it. It amounts to nothing.
They are only making a request. If I will say, give them a little credit that having filled the pulse of the citizens, they are making a request. But again, I can tell you also that the request is not because of the pulse of the citizens. The request is made pursuant to the elections that are coming in, and they feel that they have the old Naira notes they want to, of course, dangle out.
Okay.
To do the elections. It's on that ground they are requesting.
All right.
For an extension, not on grounds that the citizens are unable to access the new Naira notes.
Okay, can't we, because if we say the provisions of the law do not really bring up any ways in which that can be tackled if the president or the CBN fails, you know, in satisfying the citizenry in that regard, then can't we look at the aspect, let's explore the infringement on the rights of the citizens and the role of the judiciary or the role of the legislature to tackle that aspect of infringement on the rights of the citizens. You agree that it's an infringement on their right. How can these rights be addressed if they are infringed upon in the law court?
It's an infringement on the rights of the citizens. But there's a challenge in exercising that right. The challenge is that any person must bring an action in respect to the violation of this right.
Like suing the CBN?
Yes.
Can CBN be sued?
It can be sued. It has no immunity. The CBN can be sued. The CBN
as a corporate entity?
Yes, they can be sued.
Okay.
But the question is that since it's a public right, you must establish that you were affected more than any other person. That's the challenge in exercising the right. There is a right, of course.
We see people going nude on social media.
Of course.
Video clips.
I also see situations
that's alarming.
Yeah, where a person slumper died,
demanding for his money.
After staying for long, he died.
How best can we describe this infringement, and how best can the judiciary come to the rescue of the citizens?
In such situations, the relatives of that man can sue the bank and join CBN.
Oh.
The man that died there, in such situation, those families have suffered more over and above other persons.
Although what we saw in the clip, we can't really verify to know basically or critically if death occurred or if somebody died in the process.
But from what we are seeing,
I think we have little
information about that. But if the information is anything to go by that somebody died in the hospital, in the bank, in the course of trying to access his money, having stayed hours and he died, the families can maintain an action against the bank and join CBN for the loss of their
against the bank
and CBN to be joined as an interested party. Because of course the bank will say they were implementing the policy of central bank. So if you don't join central bank in the suit, you may be shooting the wrong person. So you join central bank and maintain an action against the bank that it was due to negligence that the person died. If they have properly planned the policy, the person would not have gone to the bank and stayed over 6 hours. The report I got was that the person would have been in the bank for over 6 hours. He couldn't access.
Okay, is it not also a lacuna, or how do I put it? Is it not also a setback if the CBN is given such powers and not protected in case situations like this or precarious events occur?
That's why before a policy is chalked out, before you chalk out a policy, you must also have looked at what are the disadvantages, what are the problems, what are the possible problems that policy will emanate from it.
Okay.
You must do a rethinking before you chalk out a policy and give deadlines for the implementation of the policy. If the CBA has failed in that regard, he cannot approbate and reprobate. He cannot now say that he has the power to so regulate the policy, the monetary policy, and as such any circumstances resulting from there, he should not be punished. He can't, because what he has done was a policy not well thought out. It's a policy not well implemented. And as such, he cannot benefit from his own inability to articulate a proper way of implementing the policy. Okay. So he can be sued even though he has the power to so regulate the monetary policy. Even if he has the power to redesign the money policy, he has also the responsibility So liabilities flow from responsibility. So he is liable for his actionable conduct.
Okay.
Or omissions to act.
Okay.
Or what a reasonable man would have done in the circumstances of the case, which he fails to do, he can be punished.
Okay, suing corporate bodies in that capacity could be challenging, and I think you will agree. Otherwise, if you disagree, you can also vent your opinion in that regard. That it is difficult to pull through a case in the court because of its expensive nature and technicalities involved. Because usually there's this saying that justice delayed is justice not served or denied.
You see, the challenge a sui corporate body has been laid to rest in the case of Salomon versus Salomon. So once you leave the veil, who are those behind the company? Who are those? For instance, the alter ego of the Central Bank of Nigeria is Godwin Emefiele. So it's the Central Bank. They also have a governing board. They can be sued for violating the rights of the citizens, the economic rights of the citizens.
Only on the aspect of debt occurrence?
No, debt of occurrence. Oh. Even in this wise.
In the hardship.
In the hardship.
That the citizens are faced with.
You need to prove.
Yeah.
That is just the hurdles.
You need to prove the severity.
Yes.
Of how
what you are
faced. Yes, what you are faced with.
Yes. You need to, not necessarily debt.
Okay.
Not necessarily debt before you, but I'm only saying that the rigors may of course dissuade people from not instituting an action in court. For instance, as we have just alluded to, justice delayed is justice denied. Some of the rigors, the technicalities in institutional action and the possibility of reaping the fruit of that action sometimes is overwhelming.
Okay, let's look at who takes the blame. Looking at what we have here, the scenario we have here, where it's only the CBN, and the president that are key actors in this policy. If these policies, as we have just now, is churning out a negative impact, who takes the blame? The CBN or the governor or the president?
There are a various class of persons that have the blame. First, the president, the CBN,
because he approves,
and the banks, because there is in the CBA Act there is a provisions that when such a policy is to be implemented, the president, the chairman of the board of the governing board of the CBN governor itself, heads of banks, commercial banks, will have a meeting where they will look at the synopsis of the policy and how it should be implemented.
That they are interfaced with.
They interface with. So this class of persons are vicariously liable for any injuries, sufferings, pains, or damage that any citizens suffered in the cost of assessing this.
Okay, but why are you capturing the banks? Because
no, I said that
they seem to be, they are regulated by the CBN.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
So they have little or no power.
No, they do. Oh. The reason is that they are the persons who, of course, the customers, the Nigerian citizens are faced with.
Yeah.
In terms of assessing their money, and not the central bank. So they have opportunity to have also bring in their wealth of experience on how these policies should be implemented.
Okay.
Wherein they will able
to the CBN's goals.
So because they are the drivers of the policy. It's not the CBN. The CBN don't make a policy for them to implement. They should have also envisaged the danger, the difficulty, the ease with which to implement the policy. They would have they play an advisory role.
So they are also liable.
They are liable. The banks, the CEOs of these banks, the central bank is, and the president. There is a collective responsibility in articulating and implementing the policy.
Okay,
if this group of persons have failed to also contemplate that these are the possible challenges, if they couldn't envisage the possible challenges, any occurrence resulting from there is a liability on their part, and therefore they can be sued in respect to their action. The only thing that we are looking at is that when you sue, it takes a long time, and persons maybe before you would say, oh, they have maybe after 1 year.
Yes, because it seems to be delayed.
It becomes stale.
Yes.
Maybe the system would have regulated itself,
and then
such
is denied.
That is the only major challenge. But whether or not there is a liability Of course there is.
Okay, in case you're just watching, it's Law and You, and I've been discussing with a custodian of the law, Sunday Daudu. We are looking at the rights of the citizens and the role of the government in protecting these rights vis-a-vis the aspect of the scarcity of the Naira notes by the CBN guidelines, and of course petrol scarcity. Now, let's take this aspect where elections is getting closer. We have the challenge of petrol scarcity. We have the challenge of note scarcity. Now, in your opinion, to salvage the problem, what do you see or advise the government to do?
Yes, whatever we are doing now, whatever any government think is doing now, is called a post-mortem assessment of the situation, and as such gives little or no results to the benefit of the citizens. Now I want to look at it from the point of the scarcity of the Naira notes and vis-a-vis the scarcity of fuel. Now, a government, I will localize this issue. The peculiarities, for instance, in Edo State, I think is the highest, where people buy fuel for almost 800 naira. I bought for 675 naira.
Can you imagine that?
Some person said they bought for 700, but I bought for 675 naira in Edo State. In Abuja, there is scarcity of fuel, but the price remains same. 190, 179, 180 in Abuja. Yes, there's scarcity of fuel. You can see lots of queues in filling stations and all of that.
But it's difficult to say that the price remains the same.
The price remains the same. I just came back.
We have major marketers as players and independent marketers.
That's why you can get.
And the rate at which
you can see what I gave
to independent.
You can see what I gave. I said 179.
Okay.
180, 190.
Okay, within that range.
Within that range. In Abuja. But in Edo State, the situation is worse.
It means there seems to be a regulation.
The situation is
in the FCT.
Yes, that's what I'm going to
missing in the state.
I'm going to localize it here. With due respect to the government of the day, without trying to derogate the government. During Adams Oshomole's government, there was a petroleum monetary team. Know to everybody, even the child in the stomach, know about Lord Amelsude, be the chairman of petroleum monetary team in Edo State. The question today, who is the petroleum monetary team in Edo State as we speak?
Okay, I think that's beyond the scope of what we are
discussing. No, what I'm telling you.
But I believe they are putting their acts together right now
it's reactionary.
To set up
I'm saying
a task force in that
I said it's reactionary.
It's reactionary.
That's what I said. Okay. That is not a government of the people. That's why I told you that whatever the government is doing now, whatever the government is doing now is post-mortem.
Okay.
After the death of situations, you want to now look at what causes the death. When you would have been able to prevent it. What the state I'm aware that the government has now given 72 hours, Edo State government, 72 hours to major marketers and whoever is in charge.
Yeah, to return.
That's what I'm saying is reactionary. Or threat messages that some certain parts of the state will be blocked.
Oh, protests are coming up.
The government didn't do anything. And even as we speak, sir, I can say that categorically. I have not seen any task force going from one filling station to another since these situations, monetary availability, or whether there is also a hoarding.
Well, is it not possible that a lot that is before the government and the animal task of government may not give government to be perfect in holistically looking at every task? And so whichever that meets the eye as per protest or reactions from the public, then it is the responsibility of the government to quickly tackle it. And just now we have a state government that is tackling it, even though you said it's reactionary, but at least there's tackling of the situation. So isn't that a better side?
I do not agree, sir. I do not agree, with due respect, that the state government, our state government, is living up to its situation. I'm telling you now categorically that since the statements were made, or the purported meeting held by state government and others, the previous sectors, I have not seen a military team, petroleum monetary team, going from one filling station or the other to actually test whether or not there is fuel or the availability. I'm telling you now that I have not seen.
All right, thank you. Basically, we're going to be having a second edition of this topic, and I will be having Daudu Sunday with me to finish this, and we're going to be looking at more about the rights of the citizens and how to protect these rights, the responsibility of the government What are the setbacks of the government? How to tackle these setbacks? What are the bodies that could protect the citizens' rights also outside the government? Looking at the civil society groups, looking at other bodies like the Socio-Economic Rights Accountability Project, and a lot. We're going to be putting our big light in these directions in a subsequent edition. From Sunday Daudu is goodbye, and of course from me. We'll see you on the next one.